Welcome to Masters of Growth for Plaintiff Law Firms. This is where we sit down and talk to industry leaders to bring you lessons, stories, and insights that will help you grow your revenue, margins, and the happiness that you have at work. I am really excited today to be bringing to you this conversation with Eric Lee Usher. Eric is an entrepreneur, author, philanthropist. He's been making his mark across many industries. We'll be here all day if I list out all the companies he's started. He has built a bunch of amazing companies. Today, for this audience, I think the most relevant thing that he has built and is running is a company called Legal Ava, which specializes in providing highly trained advanced virtual assistants. So Ava, I believe, stands for Advanced Virtual Assistants. Yeah. To help law firms become more efficient in their practice and just help them get extra help with all the back office, admin, intake, all the stuff. And I thought this was super relevant to chat with Eric because I get a lot of questions all the time from plaintiff firms and all kinds of law firms about when, if, how they should hire a virtual assistant. When is it a right fit? And I just thought this would be great to dig into this topic with Eric, who specializes in this, runs a company doing this specifically with law firms. And he's also worked with other types of business as well. He uses Ava with other businesses, but there's a dedicated focus area just for law firms. And so, Eric, thank you so much for being here. And I'm excited to chat with you about this stuff.
No, thanks for having me. I'm excited to jump in.
Awesome. Well, maybe why don't we just start with just when is a good time? Like how should a law firm think about hiring a virtual assistant, and when is a good time to do that? Like, is there a certain trigger point in the business where you're like, now's the perfect fit? Like, how do you think about that?
So from a business model standpoint, I always say now is immediate. But from understanding kind of the nuances of the firm, there's a lot of times where it's not even advised for the law firm to even hire a virtual assistant. So just kind of give you some examples of when it makes sense. If you're a new lawyer and, you just started and, you're trying to build your book of business, trying to build your clientele, then, a lot of times, traditionally, a lot of attorneys go with who they trust, their immediate family members or their friends, and they typically hire that person. But what tends to happen is that person they're just not qualified to do the job. The trust is there because there's a lot of trust that's needed in this space. When you're considering that, it's probably advised to do the virtual assistant route, because what they can do is they can help you create systems and SOPs so that when you hire your friend and you hire your family member, they can work in sync so that you can maintain that job for a long time. Another good is if you're just overwhelmed with cases and you're starting to hear complaints, you're getting 3-star reviews, you're getting 2-star reviews, and clients are complaining. A lot of reasons why clients complain is because lawyers or the staff or the paralegals are not attending to them. They're not communicating with them. And it's as simple as, hey, just following up on the case, just letting you know, we don't have an update. We're waiting for the medical records, we're waiting for the police report, we're waiting for the opposing counsel. It's just the basics of just communicating with the client. When you start noticing that your clients are affected, then it may be advised to just hire a virtual assistant just to handle just the basic communication, because that's where a lot of the additional referrals and additional business can come from. So I would say new lawyers that are just starting off trying to figure out how to handle admin, and then existing firms that have a caseload where their clients are starting to be neglected.
Interesting. Those are good 2 examples. Yeah. Like one, you're just starting out, you just need some infrastructure, and the default, I've seen this a lot. Like, I'll just hire my family because I trust them, but they might be completely unqualified for the position. And then, you just have too much caseload. What are good tasks or work streams or work to turn to a virtual assistant for? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I get this feeling, there's sort of this misconception that virtual assistants really can only handle, minute, simple tasks, but I imagine they can handle a lot more than that. Like, what are the best work streams or types of work that you should think, I could hire a virtual assistant to come in and do this?
Oh, man. So, anything that can be done on a computer, your virtual assistant could do. So I guess the way I kind of structure it is whenever I create a standard operating procedure for the virtual assistant, which we do for all clients, the moment they get hired, is we record ourselves. I'm going to take it from Dan Martell's camcorder method, where you literally just record yourself doing the activity that you want them to do. And then from there, I send them the raw video and I say, all right, now I want you to create an SOP based off what I sent you to see if they understand if my instructions were correct. And a lot of times if I see that I messed up a little bit or they didn't really interpret because I just muscle memory know, I reshoot it again and then I have them follow up. So essentially anything you can do on your computer, they can also do. Client intake, customer follow-up, communication with the billing, communication with medical providers, following up with your staff, letting them know who you need to contact. Because a lot of times paralegals need help. Like these paralegals are just overworked. And because, attorneys, like they're like superhumans, they can just manage all these different things. They assume their paralegal can do the same, not realizing that that paralegal is pretty much structured in a job. Unless she's incentivized to get these cases across the finish line, it's a job because, they're not lawyers. So they're not really supposed to be incentivized to do that. So a way to kind of help the paralegal out is to onboard a VA to say, all right, these are the clients you're supposed to contact today. These are the cases that's currently pending. These are the cases that are expired. Essentially just the overall helping you out with what you're currently doing with your firm. The biggest thing I would say is if you're utilizing a practice management software, oh my gosh, that VA can become the expert. A lot of firms have it. They're paying monthly for it. A lot of them are very expensive, but they're not using it. They're expecting everybody to use it. They're asking for updates, but they're just not using it. It's just a fact. A lot of firms are just not using the practice management software. And when you implement a VA and make them the master of the practice management software, they hold everybody accountable and you'll have all your case updates a lot faster than spending 8 hours getting everybody together talking about, all right, let's update on these cases. So there's a lot of different things they can do. And there's different tiers to VAs as well. If you just want somebody to do data entry, then that's one thing. If you want somebody to actually communicate with your clients, that's another thing. We have bilingual AVAs as well. So they can pretty much do anything you need. You just need to be very specific on what you want done.
So you said something that just jumped out at me and I couldn't stop thinking about the whole time you're talking there that I didn't realize that you guys do, but I think is genius. I've hired a lot of VAs and I usually build out big, detailed standard operating procedures and then I hand it over to them. But what you're saying is if you just record it, they'll actually build the SOP for you, which is a massive burden off of someone who isn't quite as operationally minded, but just kind of knows how to do everything. So it's you just record yourself and then they'll build out the SOP and then you can kind of tweak it together and then roll forward. Is that accurate?
That's the best approach, hands down, because you can, you inspect what you expect. If you're currently doing it yourself, you record yourself doing it. And then a lot of times they may see something that you missed in the step. You're like, because you were going so fast. So that's why recording, you may end up recording it 3 different times before it's perfect. But once you get that recording and then they've mastered that SOP, then now you have a training document for anybody you hire moving forward. So you don't have to repeat that process.
I love that. Yeah, that's beyond just executing the process. They're actually helping you create the process and document the process, which is awesome.
Exactly.
Super cool. How would you think about I'm just going to put myself in a skeptical law firm operator point of view. And I'm what about, the quality of the work? You talked about client interaction. Do I really trust these people to interact with my clients? Do I really trust them to understand maybe some of the nuances of professional communication? I guess how do you help them level up and be trained to operate at that level?
So the good news is we only hire advanced VAs. That's where the advanced side comes from, because these are virtual assistants that already have experience working with law firms in the United States. And a lot of times these lawyers are hiring these VAs for, cases that are just going to last 6 months, a year. And then afterwards they dump them off because they're back to their regular business. Not realizing that they just invested so much time in that VA's training. That VA is now just an expert at whatever it is they trained them on. And then now they're off doing regular T-Mobile or Verizon work. But this person is sitting on a legal experience. So we find those VAs that already have that legal experience. And then we interview them and say, all right, so where are you? And kind of just from conversation, you can kind of assess who they are. But the first thing that we look for across the board is integrity. I realized a long time ago that if I just hire for merit as far as what they put on their paper and not integrity, then I set myself up for failure, because I realized I can't train integrity. I can train you how to do anything that I need done specifically, but I cannot train integrity. So when I find that individual that has that willingness to learn, that willingness to grow, that's just you can just understand that person genuinely cares about doing their task, then when you train them, their learning curve is a lot faster. So for the skeptics out there, it's one of those things where I would say just try it out. Just for 30 days, just try it out. Just do a trial period, which we do with everybody anyway. We give you a 30-day trial period, and you will be surprised as to what you can actually get accomplished. You're like, oh my God, I should have done this a long time ago. Because these are people with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, doctors. Like these are well-educated individuals. They just so happen to be overseas.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, what's the difference? If they're as good as someone in the US that just happened to be overseas, whether it's a remote employee in the US or outside of the US, like maybe there is no different, right? Like, yeah.
You just got to interview the right person. Like it goes down to the interview process. Like we do personality assessment. It's really important to choose the right one, because I've chosen someone and it was a waste of time, money, and headache. I have a lot of war stories from choosing the wrong VAs that I've learned from.
Interesting. Yeah, I bet. There's probably a lot of learnings there. How should a law firm think about managing a VA? Like, is it any different? You just think about it as just another employee in your company and there's really no difference? Or are there special considerations? Are there like time zone considerations to think about? Should you want VAs in certain time zones and not in others? Like, how should folks think about that?
Well, as far as time zone, virtual remote, they adjust to the business's time zone. So that's the one thing.
Okay.
And we typically find someone that's already has worked in that time zone, so it's not foreign to them. Another thing is, as far as managing is concerned, it's similar to when we were all in lockdown during COVID. We were all remote. It's like a remote worker. They just so happen to be overseas. Now, one of the biggest things that tend to happen with hiring a VA is, how do I communicate with my VA? How do I get in touch with my VA? That was one of the biggest setbacks with hiring overseas. So what we did was we did a partnership with NetLink, and that gives us the ability to give every new client their own VoIP system. And then that VoIP system now goes to the Ava, and then they're able to communicate and text messages to clients. They can get a customized number that's branded with their firm on there. And it's the same system that MX used. So it's very compliant, and it's an app, so they can be on the go or on their desktop. So it's similar to managing anyone else on your staff. But what we do internally is we train them on how to communicate with the client. So you should automatically expect a morning daily brief of what's going on for your day. And then you should automatically expect the end of the day report of what transpired and what to expect. That's the first thing we train all the AVAs on, is communication, communication, communication. If you give me an update in the morning and an update when you leave, I have an idea of what you did.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Is there a risk that the VA replaces the existing staff? Like, is that ever a concern that comes up from either staff members or from firm owners?
Yeah, when I was talking to paralegals about this, they were like, "Oh, you're trying to replace us? No one's." And I was like, "No, listen, that's the opposite. I don't want to replace you. You all are invaluable. Paralegals are paralegals for a reason. Litigation paralegals are litigation paralegals for a reason. What we're trying to do is we're trying to add that support staff to the paralegal, so the paralegal can actually have a work-life balance. Because I can't tell you how many paralegals I've spoken to that say they take their work home because the case is never ending. And depending on the practice area, it can be really stressful. It can be really draining. I mean, I believe the industry is kind of one of the highest suicide rates. It's because of all the negative cases that just come on. So, I mean, like, kudos to the firms, kudos to the paralegals that deal with this. So we're not trying to replace anyone. Everybody needs to be in the firm. Everybody needs to be face-to-face with clients. We want to handle all the things that can be done on the computer so that your staff can be less stressed about what's going on with their day-to-day. So it's a support as opposed to a replace.
Right. So it kind of amplifies those people rather than replaces them. It's hey,
100%.
Take all the administrative work out.
Yeah. They're stressed. A lot of them are stressed, and they're just like, So it's just to have somebody help out is invaluable for their mental health.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I'm curious too. I just wanted to double click. You said something earlier about when you're hiring these advanced virtual assistants. One, it sounds like you're looking for folks that already have a certain level of experience in the legal industry, and maybe they're working now somewhere outside the legal industry and, but have the skills to sort of come back. It's like they're not being fully utilized almost. And then you also mentioned screening for integrity. I'm just curious, like, how do you interview and screen for integrity? Like, I'm not asking just for the purposes of the audience, but also for myself. I find screening for values and integrity is so important. I'm just curious, like, are there any learnings or lessons that you're able to share around that?
Yes. Okay. So at first I didn't know how to do it. At first I kind of was just going based off conversation, kind of going based off certain keywords and stuff like that. But what I learned is understanding the culture plays a huge role in screening for integrity, because a lot of times there are different cultural norms that everybody have that you're just like, wait a minute, should I be offended by this statement? But because according to their culture, that's just normal. That's just what they said. So once I realized that, okay, in order for me to fully understand the person's personality and to really understand who they are, I need to kind of understand their background. So I need to understand, all right, so where in the city do you live? Okay, so tell me about your upbringing. Like, I actually ask personal questions to dissect who they are. How are you with your family? Like, so are you still in communication? Because certain cultures have very strict family ties. And when you hear somebody that historically have very strict family ties, and they're telling you, oh, I don't really have a communication with my siblings, or I don't really communicate with my mother or father. Those are kind of indicators that's like, okay, so something traumatic happened that kind of made you jump into a certain space. So it's really about just understanding the who the person is, who the culture is, and asking those very specific questions that unveil a truth about them, and then how they answer it. And then I like to do video interviews with them because, I'm 17 years marketing expert. So I pride myself in understanding human behavior and really just judging someone from kind of just their tone, their cadence, how they behave, just all these different nuances that I assess as a marketer. I applied that here. So when I'm seeing them and I ask kind of off the wall questions that they normally are not asked during interviews, because it's international, I can kind of get away with certain things to kind of really just see what makes them tick. So how were you with your last boss? What's one thing that your last boss did that really pissed you off? Seeing how they answered it. And a lot of times people will just like, oh, very cookie cutter answer. But as you see my personality now, I give them that same energy. Like, oh, Eric is casual. Eric is fine. I can be 100 with him. I can be cool with Eric. I make them feel that level of understanding. So then they drop their guard. My first goal is to drop their guard, make them feel comfortable, and then I start asking those questions that are like not standard for interviews. So they're like, oh wow, why is he's asking me all these very interesting questions? And it's essentially when you ask somebody a question that they're not expecting, at that moment, you can see them respond like, oh, wow. And based off that response, you can either see them go into it or they retract. So immediately, if you just ask somebody that off the wall, this is in life, in general, with clients, this is a general behavioral thing that you can do. Ask someone an off the wall question to elicit an emotion, not really a response, and see how they respond, whether they lean in or they lean out. That tells you a lot about where that person sits with you, the conversation, and the question. So there's a lot of those different nuances that I've just mastered reading all the different psychological books out there. And so, yeah.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. It's different, but it reminds me, I want to incorporate this into other hiring that I do. I've always been big on value alignment and trying to understand how people behaved in certain situations in the past. But I feel like you've taken it to another level in how you're trying to really not just understand how they behaved in the past, but understand like more deeply how they've behaved, what their situation is, what their background is, what context maybe might be driving them to behave a certain way, what behaviors are maybe normal in their culture, and to what extent do they deviate from that or not, and like really trying to understand like who is this person that we might be fitting into this other group, and will there be a fit there, which I think is awesome and fascinating.
It's so important because the goal with us is we're looking for long-term placement. We're not trying to do one-offs. We're not trying to do just somebody we're looking to build somebody with you. If we're going to invest this much time, we give them training, we give them continuing education training, we give them bonuses, we do holidays. So it's like that. We really build a company culture where they love working for Ava and they love being loyal to us. So if that's the case, then we want to make sure that we're choosing them like they're choosing us, because we're looking to have somebody that wants to grow with us, not somebody that just wants to check. And you can kind of tell by asking those very specific questions.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just to sort of play the skeptic or devil's advocate, if, again, I'm the operator at a law firm and I'm thinking about doing this myself. Either I want to just hire a contractor locally or I want to hire a VA. What would I have to go through to accomplish the same outcome? And like, what's the benefit of going through your firm versus, me reaching out to people in, I don't know, Pakistan, Bangladesh, South America, the Philippines, whatever. Like, what advice would you have for me if I really wanted to do this on my own? And then like, what advantage would there be to go through your firm instead?
Well, I always say for those entrepreneurs that are like me, that are just self-starters, that just want to do it on their own, I say go for it. I say go for it because the only way you're going to kind of solve that itch is if, you just go through the problems yourself. A lot of times as entrepreneurs, when we try stuff, like if somebody trying to set up a Google AdWords campaign on their own, or they want to just do anything on their own, they typically try. Then once they realize the stopgap and they're like, okay, there's a lot of roadblocks here, then that's when they typically hire a professional or somebody that has experience. And to me, that's helpful because when you see kind of what we go through and vetting these people, going on all these different websites, these business listings and all that, and then onboarding them, looking at their resumes, hiring them, putting them through the personality assessments, when you kind of see that process, you're like, you know what? I'm an expert at this. I'd rather just be an expert at this. I'm going to let them be the expert at that. The learning curve, the money saved, the time investment, it's worth hiring somebody that already has gone through the matrix. But if you're like, hey, I have the time, I have the resources, I want to do it on my own, then by all means, I actually give a free ebook away on how to hire your own virtual assistant. You can just follow me at the virtual assistant expert on Instagram. DM me Ava, AVA, and I'll send you the free ebook. And there's no opt-in. It's just a Google Drive link. You can read it yourself, and I break down exactly the steps that's needed to hire a good VA so you can actually do it yourself. So I actually welcome those entrepreneurs that are ambitious and say, hey, I want to do it myself, to go about, and I give them the ebook with the playbook on how to do it so they can actually learn what it takes to actually find somebody really good and qualified.
I love that. And yeah, for those listening, by the time you're listening to this, that link will be in the show notes where you can get that ebook. That makes total sense. Yeah. Any entrepreneur, to start any business, you have to have a certain level of I can figure this out attitude, right? And so you start applying that to everything. And I totally agree with you. You hit this wall where you're like, wait, this isn't the problem that I'm supposed to be solving. Like, I set out to build a business solving this problem. Why am I solving this problem? Like, let me just
income generating activities only is what I need to focus on. So yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Again, would love to have everyone listening to this take a look at that ebook. I would love to look at it too, because usually when you go through that process of learning all the steps involved, that motivates you even more to be like, let me just work with a partner that can handle this.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome. Like, I'm curious, what countries are you typically hiring folks from? And like, is there a concern with accents? Does that impact anything? What's been your experience there?
Americans, we have a bias towards accents because of our experience with the T-Mobiles of the world, the Verizon of the world, our bank. And what I always tell everyone is we're still doing business with those companies. They've been hiring virtual assistants for years, cutting down on costs. We're just now getting hip to it because it's so accessible. So I've hired from all over the world, actually. I mean, I still currently have VAs from different parts of the world. But when it comes to customer service and assisting businesses, my two primary are the Philippines and South America. I choose South America for the bilingual, for people that want the Spanish and English. And then the South American culture, they have this hustle culture about them. They're very ambitious. Like they're like, let's go. They're movers and shakers within that culture. And then in the Filipino culture, they're very hospitable. Like, oh my gosh, like they're innate, just who they are as a person is just very kind and very gentle, and they're very community oriented, very supportive. And you could just tell through conversation who had that traditional upbringing and who's kind of had the American upbringing. So it's pretty interesting. So for the biases, like, listen, you have some Filipinos that, like, I mean, they sound like your auntie and uncle. Like, they so ingrained in the American culture because it's a big American culture. It's a big U.S. base over there. They celebrate Christmas for like 4 months. Like, so there's a lot of American influence over there. So the accent is something that you can just go over, because when they can kind of articulate themselves and speak very well, present themselves very well, your client really just cares about getting the results. They really just care about getting their answers solved. And that's essentially what we train them on. So when you get an advanced VA, the accent is not even a factor. And the more you communicate with them, the more they repeat the same thing over and over again, the better they become at the job. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do think it's just like biases, right? Like, until you jump in and start actually working with the VA or talking to people and realizing, how good some of them are, and how some of their accents are just the same as any other accent of anyone who immigrated to this country. Like it's like, yeah, this is fine. Like there's nothing wrong. So
it's what's their skill set. Can they do the job? Can they do it effectively? Because we measure their performance, and they're hitting above 80% performance. You're going to be a happy client.
Yeah, 100%. How do you think about, I'm just imagining sort of other risks or objections, not so much risks, because I think these are solvable, and I'm curious to get your perspective, but just think of data security, right? Like if you're giving folks in other countries access to sensitive client data, are there like best practices on how to protect that and how to set things up such that all of that is secure? Any thoughts on that when onboarding virtual assistants?
Oh, a lot of thoughts on that. I mean, data security is the most important thing, especially in a sensitive field of legal. You got the attorney-client privilege that you just can't reveal certain things. You got the HIPAA compliance. You got, the global privacy. Like there's a lot of different regulations around international communication, which is why we did the partnership with NetLink, because their system is fully compliant. So all communication is secured, recorded, and encrypted as well. And as far as protecting your information, when you have a practice management software, you can customize what you expose your VA to, right? So, and then they also have an NDA, they sign a contract with us, and they also sign a contract with you. So they have that protectiveness there. Their country has a whole nother level of, that's why I chose the Philippines as well, because they're really strict on their citizens. Like they don't play. So there's a lot of legal compliance things that happen over there as well that is benefit that I'm hip to, because I know how to navigate those. So we give everybody their own email address so that we're not using any of their personal information, so that in the event that one of your VAs, something tragic happens to them, we have access to everything, and we could just give you that same access as well. I made that mistake in the past where my VA went ghost and I lost everything and I had to start over. So that was a nightmare for me. I've kind of learned a lot of the data security issues, and I've kind of solved it here with the Legal Ava and Just Ask Ava. But yeah, it's really just about being proactive in what you share with them. When you share documents, or when they create documents to share to you, that you have a central hub that they can share it in, so you always have access to it in the event that something just bad happens, because life does happen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's best practices, frankly, with VA or not VA, just like all employees. That makes total sense. Have tight onboarding and offboarding and access controls and all of that. Just going back, I asked you at the beginning about sort of the trigger point of when to think about hiring a VA. And you talked about, a solo person, one person firm just getting started. Maybe that's a good time just to sort of get some infrastructure built or some sort of back end help, I guess. And then also with larger firms, you have too many cases. Any pieces you'd add to that? Just if you're a small firm or a large firm, just like areas people often need the most help with, or when those types of firms should think about hiring a VA. Maybe we've covered it all, but just curious if there's anything else.
So I think it's important to mention, because the main thing about being in business is you want to grow your business. You want to eventually grow your firm. You want to hire multiple lawyers. You want to hire multiple paralegals. That's the ultimate goal. Whether you want to be a mom and pop shop, you want to have a good flow of clients, or whether you're a medium or large, the goal is to have a consistent flow of clients. As a marketing professional, one thing that I've learned is when it comes to the legal space, the lowest hanging fruit that a lot of firms miss out on are referrals. Just like if they understand that if you take care of the client that you're currently dealing with, that you will have a raving fan of your entire case process, because everybody on the civilian side that are not lawyers, that are not attorneys, right? Whenever we have an attorney, we tell everybody, oh man, I just got in the case. I got my attorney. Oh, my lawyer's calling me. It's like this human instinct based off Hollywood that, I got to talk to my lawyer 1 second. It's like a brag that we have a lawyer, right? So what lawyers are not realizing is that person is either bragging good about you or they're bragging bad about you. And when you're neglecting them and you're ignoring them, they just want to update. They're in a lot of pain sometimes, or they're dealing with their spouse. They're dealing with so many different things. They got a case coming up. All they want is an update. But the client doesn't know that the lawyer is actually out there working. The lawyer is in court. The lawyer is talking to the judge. The lawyer is talking to the opposing counsel. The lawyer is trying to do all these different things that the client just doesn't know what happens in the legal space. So there's like this middle ground where it's like, hey, let's bring a VA in, and then let that VA be the client liaison, just to give them an update. Hey, I know you haven't heard from the attorney in a while. Just wanted to give you an update. We're currently following up. We're currently still waiting for this. If that's the only update you have, 2 weeks, hey, just it's the same update. I just want to let you know that the attorney is still thinking about you. That small thing it could mean the world to the client. So they're going to end up leaving you 5-star review just because you're talking to them. And then guess what? They're going to go out to the world and say, oh, my attorney's always communicating with me. Oh, I love my attorney. My attorney always, people love to brag that they have an attorney. So make them feel like they have an attorney by communicating with them. You don't have to do it directly. Have somebody on your staff or a VA do that for you because your paralegals are too busy trying to close the case. So just hire a VA to just communicate. If you just do that one thing, then your reviews are going to go through the roof, the referrals are going to go through the roof, and everybody's going to be happy to call you their attorney where you're going to have to start transferring cases over to other attorneys. So that's the one thing I would really stress upon from a marketing and a VA perspective. The clients need to be communicated with.
I love that. That's such a good insight. It's like sometimes the simplest things are the most effective things, and just consistent, good communication is so important. But I think the insight that I hadn't even thought of is like, and I think you lose sight of when you work in the industry, and especially if you're an attorney, is that consumer dynamic of, it's the psychology of like, I have a lawyer, right? I have an attorney, and like you brag about it and you talk about it. And it's like, it's a subconscious thing of like, I have power because I have an attorney. And like, it's super lame, but like as humans, right? We probably, a lot of us do that. And like tap into that, use that to your advantage. That makes so much sense.
Oh man,
it's a great
they
insight.
will brag, give them your cards. Like it feels good to know that you have support from an official authority. So that's a human instinct that Hollywood did that to us. So that's just who we are. So like you said, tap into that, and it's going to be a very valuable tool for the firm.
Love that. Love that. Eric, this has been such a pleasure. Where can people learn more about you, contact you, in addition to the link to the ebook you mentioned earlier? Any other places, contact methods for people that want to get in touch and learn more about your AVAs and getting help there, or just chat with you in general?
Yeah, so I'm pretty responsive. I have VAs that respond to the virtual assistant expert. I post videos where I'm giving out tips on how to hire a virtual assistant for those ambitious entrepreneurs that want to do it themselves. I was like, you know what, if you're going to do it yourself, let me at least give you some pointers on how to do it, because I'm all about building and helping people grow. JustAskAva.com for attorneys, LegalAva.com. Either one of those work. That gives you access to a meeting link. If you're curious about, does this work for my firm, and you just want to ask me more questions, I'm open to it. Like, I love having these conversations because I understand that each conversation is moving the needle forward. And then if I do a great job with one client, then that referral is going to spread. So I invest my time in making sure people have crystal clear clarity on what's going on. So yeah, that's the best way to reach me.
Those are in the links, those are in the show notes below. And I think that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much, Eric, for coming on and chatting about this.
Fun. Oh yeah.
Yeah, lots of fun. Well, take care. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.